stood before the tall mirror in her private chamber and looked at herself. She wore the white ceremonial dress of her people. The silver threads ran through the fabric like rivers of starlight. Any other bride would feel joy on this day, but felt nothing except cold anger. Today she would marry a human. She closed her eyes and remembered the words of her father, Emperor. This marriage will bring peace between our empire and the human alliance. You will do this for your people. You will do your duty. Duty, that word had controlled her entire life. She was the third princess of the empire and her life was never her own. But this was too much. They were an ancient race. They had traveled the stars when humans were still living in caves and hunting with sharp rocks, and now she had to marry one of them. The door opened behind her. Her older sister walked in with soft steps. His face showed worry as she looked at. "The ceremony will begin soon," said quietly. "Are you ready?" "How can I be ready for this?" Turned to face her sister. "They are giving me to a human like I am some kind of gift, like I am nothing." Moved closer and took hands in hers. "I know this is hard, but father says this human is different. He is a soldier, a captain in their military. They say he has won many battles." Pulled her hands away. Humans win battles against other humans, against weak enemies. They have never faced a real war. They are children playing with weapons they do not understand. Had no answer for this. They both knew it was true. Humans had only joined the galactic community 50 years ago. They were new. They were weak. Their bodies broke easily. Their lives were short. They died from simple diseases that had cured thousands of years ago. And now would spend her life with one of them. The ceremony hall was filled with hundreds of guests. Nobles stood on one side, their tall bodies and pale blue skin making them look like living statues. On the other side stood the humans. They were shorter, their skin in different shades of brown and pink, their eyes small and round. Walked down the long path to the altar. Each step felt heavy. She kept her face calm and empty, showing no emotion. A princess never showed weakness. Then she saw him. The human stood at the altar, waiting for her. He wore a black military uniform with medals on his chest. His name was. He was not tall by standards, but he stood straight like a soldier should. His black hair was cut short, and his dark eyes watched her as she approached. Those eyes surprised her. They were not nervous. They were not afraid. They simply watched, calm and steady, like the eyes of someone who had seen many things and was not easily shaken. Reached the altar and stood beside him. The priest began speaking the old words of union. Barely heard them. She was too busy thinking about the years ahead, years of living with this stranger, years of pretending to be his wife while her heart stayed cold. When the ceremony ended, turned to her. He did not try to kiss her, as was the human custom. He simply bowed his head slightly. "I know this is not what you wanted," he said. His voice was low and calm. "I will not pretend that it is, but I will do my best to be a good husband to you. I ask only for a chance." Looked at him for a long moment. Then she turned and walked away without a word. The first weeks of their marriage were filled with silence. They lived in a large house on a moon near the home world. The house had many rooms and made sure to stay as far from as possible. She learned his routine by accident. He woke early every morning before the sun rose. He exercised for 2 hours, running and fighting against training machines. Then he would read reports from the human military. Then he would sit alone and eat a simple meal. He never complained. He never demanded her attention. He simply lived his life quietly, like a ghost in her home. One morning found herself watching him train. She stood behind a window, hidden in shadows, and observed him fight against 3 combat robots at once. The robots were fast and strong. Most soldiers would struggle against them, but moved through them like water flowing around stones. He was not faster than them. He was not stronger, but he seemed to know where they would strike before they moved. He found the small gaps in their attacks and used them. In minutes, all three robots lay broken on the floor. Stood in the center of the training room, breathing hard. Sweat covered his face, and for just a moment saw something in his eyes, something dark and dangerous, something that did not match his quiet behavior. Then the moment passed. He wiped his face with a cloth and walked away, and he was just a simple human again. That night sat alone in her room and thought about what she had seen. Humans were supposed to be weak. Everyone knew this. Their bodies were soft. Their bones broke easily. They could not survive in extreme heat or cold. They needed to eat and sleep more than any other species. But there was something in the way fought, something that made her uncomfortable. It was like watching a small animal that everyone thought was harmless, only to discover that it had sharp teeth hidden behind its soft fur. She pushed the thought away. It did not matter. He was still just a human. He would grow old and die long before she reached middle age. This marriage was temporary in the long view of her life. She simply needed to wait. 3 months passed, and barely spoke 10 words to each other. She attended royal functions alone, telling everyone that her husband was busy with military matters. The other nobles smiled with knowing looks. They understood. No one expected a princess to actually live with her human husband. But then the message came. It arrived in the middle of the night, a priority signal from the military command. Read it in the main room, his face showing no expression. Watched from the doorway, curious despite herself. "What is it?" she asked. They were the first words she had spoken to him in weeks. Looked up at her. "Raiders," he said. "A large group of them has been spotted moving toward the outer colonies. The nearest outpost is asking for support." He paused. "The outpost is on Velar 7. Your cousin lives there." Felt ice in her blood. Her cousin was like a younger sister to her. She was sweet and kind and had no talent for fighting. "I am going to help them," said. He was already moving toward his equipment room. "You should stay here where it is safe." Stood frozen for a moment. Then she made a decision that would change everything. "No," she said, "I am coming with you." Stopped and looked at her. For a long moment neither of them spoke. Then he nodded once. "Then we should hurry," he said. "We do not have much time." As their ship flew toward Velar 7, did not know that this night would be the first step in a journey she never expected. She did not know that she would see her husband become something more than human. She did not know that legends would be born from the blood and fire waiting for them. She only knew that she was flying toward danger with a man she barely knew, a man she had dismissed as weak and unimportant. She would soon learn how wrong she was. The ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel and saw Velar 7 through the viewport. The small planet was green and brown, covered with forests and mountains. Smoke rose from several points on the surface. The raiders had already arrived. Sat at the controls, his hands moving quickly over the panels. His face was calm but could see tension in his shoulders. He was ready for battle. "The outpost is in the northern valley," he said. "That is where most of the smoke is coming from. The raiders are probably attacking there now." "How many of them?" asked. "Unknown. The communication systems are damaged. We are going in blind." Gripped the armrest of her seat. Going into battle without information was dangerous. Any smart commander would wait for support. But her cousin was down there, possibly fighting for her life at this very moment. Seemed to read her thoughts. "We cannot wait," he said. "Every minute could cost lives. I will land near the outpost and draw their attention. You find your cousin and get her to safety." "And what about you?" He did not answer. He simply flew the ship toward the planet. They landed in a forest clearing half a kilometer from the outpost. The sounds of battle reached them immediately. Explosions, screaming, the sharp crack of weapons firing. Felt her heart beating fast as she grabbed a plasma pistol from the ship's weapon storage. Took more weapons, a rifle, 2 pistols, several knives, grenades. He strapped them to his body with practiced movements like he had done this 1,000 times before. "Stay behind me until we reach the outpost," he said. "Then find your cousin. Do not wait for me." They moved through the forest quickly, led the way, his steps silent on the ground despite the heavy equipment he carried. Followed, surprised at how easily he moved through the thick trees and bushes. He seemed to become part of the forest itself. They reached the edge of the outpost and saw the horror waiting for them. The raiders were everywhere. They were a brutal species known for attacking weak colonies and stealing everything of value, including people. They stood over 2 meters tall, with gray skin and 4 arms, each ending in sharp claws. Their faces had no eyes, just smooth bone where eyes should be. They hunted by sound and smell. Bodies lay on the ground. Soldiers and civilians, cut down by the attack, felt sick at the sight. She had never seen real war before. She had trained for battle, yes, but this was different. This was real death, bloody and terrible. "The main building," whispered, pointing. "Survivors will be hiding there. That is where your cousin will be." The main building was on the far side of the outpost. Between them and the building were at least 30 warriors. Getting through them seemed impossible. "I will make a path," said. "When you see an opening, run, do not stop, do not look back." Before could respond, he was moving. What happened next would stay in memory for the rest of her long life. Did not fight like any soldier she had ever seen. He did not stand and exchange fire with the enemy. He became a shadow, moving from cover to cover with terrifying speed. His first shot took him in the throat. Before the creature fell, he had already moved, appearing behind another enemy and putting a knife through its skull. They roared in confusion. They could not track him. He was too fast, too unpredictable. He killed 3 more before they even understood they were under attack. Watched in shock. This was not the quiet man who ate breakfast alone every morning. This was something else, something dangerous. His movements were brutal and efficient, wasting nothing. Every bullet found its target. Every strike was aimed to kill. They finally organized and charged toward him, 7 of them roaring with rage. Any normal soldier would retreat, ran toward them. He slid under the first one's claws and fired up into its body. He rolled to the side as another struck at him, using the falling body as a shield. A knife flew from his hand and buried itself in a throat. He grabbed a fallen enemy's weapon and fired it into the crowd, the heavy shots tearing through gray bodies. In less than a minute, all 7 were dead. Stood among the bodies covered in blood. His chest was rising and falling with heavy breaths. A long cut ran across his arm where one of them had caught him, but his eyes were still calm, still focused. He looked at "Go now." She ran. The path to the main building was clear now. Sprinted across the open ground, her heart pounding. Behind her, she heard more fighting, more screaming. Was engaging the remaining raiders, drawing them away from her. She reached the main building and found the door locked. "Open," she shouted, pounding on the metal. "I am Princess, open the door." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the door slid open, and her cousin fell into her arms. Was crying, her body shaking. "I thought we were going to die. They killed so many people. The soldiers tried to fight, but there were too many." "It is all right," said, holding her cousin tight. "I am here now. We will get you out." Inside the building, she found 12 survivors, civilians mostly, with a few wounded soldiers. They looked at with hope and fear. "Is help coming?" one of them asked. Hesitated. She did not know. She only knew that one human was outside, fighting an army of monsters by himself. A wounded soldier near the window suddenly gasped. "Look," he said. "Look at what he is doing." Moved to the window and looked outside. What she saw made her stop breathing. Was surrounded. At least 20 had formed a circle around him, cutting off any escape. He was wounded in several places now. Blood ran down his face from a cut on his forehead. His rifle was empty, thrown aside. He held only a knife in one hand and a pistol in the other. They were laughing. They made cruel sounds, enjoying the moment before the kill. They thought they had won. Attacked first. He moved like nothing had ever seen. He was not faster than he was not stronger, but he was something they had never faced before. He was human, and humans was starting to understand, did not know how to stop fighting. He took hits that should have killed him. A claw tore across his back. Another struck his leg, but he did not fall. He kept moving, kept killing. His knife opened throats. His pistol fired until it was empty, and then he used it as a club. When that broke, he picked up a fallen enemy's blade and kept fighting. They began to feel something they rarely felt: fear. This small creature, this weak human, would not die. Every wound they gave him only seemed to make him angrier. He was not fighting like a soldier anymore. He was fighting like an animal, all teeth and fury. When the last fell, stood alone in a field of bodies. His clothing was torn and soaked with blood, some his and some from his enemies. His body was shaking. His face was pale from blood loss. But he was alive. He turned toward the main building and saw watching from the window. For a moment, their eyes met. Then his legs gave out and he collapsed on the ground. Ran outside without thinking. She reached him and dropped to her knees beside him. His eyes were closed, his breathing shallow. Up close, she could see how bad his wounds really were. Deep cuts covered his body. A normal person would already be dead. She said she did not know why, but she took his hand in hers. "Stay with me. Help is coming. Stay with me." His eyes opened slightly. He looked at her and somehow he smiled. "Did you find your cousin?" he asked. His voice was barely a whisper. Felt tears running down her face. She did not know when she had started crying. "Yes, she is safe. You saved her. You saved all of them." He nodded slightly. "Good," he said. "That is good." Then he passed out. The rescue ships arrived an hour later. Medics rushed to save his life, working desperately to close his wounds and replace the blood he had lost. They said it was a miracle he had survived. Stayed by his side the entire time. She held his hand as the medics worked. She watched his pale face and remembered what she had seen. The quiet man she had ignored for months had walked into an army alone and won. He had nearly died to save people he did not know. She had called humans weak. She had called them children. She had thought she knew everything about them. She knew nothing. When they finally returned home, did not go to her separate room. She sat beside his bed as he recovered, and she did not leave. When he finally woke, 3 days later, she was still there. "Why did you do it?" she asked him. "Why did you risk your life for strangers?" Looked at her for a long moment. Then he said something that would echo in her mind for years to come. "Because they needed help," he said simply, "and I was there." No calculation, no politics, no thoughts of reward or glory. He had fought because people were in danger, and fighting was what he could do. Sat in silence, looking at this man she had married. This human she had dismissed as nothing special. She realized she had never really seen him before. Now she was beginning to. 6 months passed after the battle on Velar 7. His life changed in ways she never expected. She no longer avoided. They ate meals together. They talked in the evenings about small things and large ones. She learned that he liked to read old Earth poetry. She learned that he had lost his parents in a colony attack when he was young. She learned that he had joined the military at 16 and had been fighting ever since. She learned that he was kind. Quiet, yes. Serious, yes. But underneath it all, there was a warmth she had never noticed before. Their marriage was still strange. They slept in separate rooms. They did not touch except by accident. But something had shifted between them. Found herself looking forward to their conversations. She found herself watching him when he did not notice, studying the way he moved, the way he thought. The news from across the galaxy was not good. A great war was coming. Everyone could feel it. The Empire, a massive collection of warrior species, had been expanding for decades. They believed strength was everything. They conquered weak planets and enslaved their people. For years, they had ignored the Empire, seeing them as not worth the trouble. But now their eyes were turning toward space. Emperor called all his advisors together, attended as a princess of the royal family, came with her, wearing his human military uniform among all the tall. The War Council was filled with fear. They had never lost a major war. Their soldiers were bred for battle. Their ships were the fastest in the galaxy. Their generals had hundreds of years of experience. "We cannot defeat them alone," one advisor said. "We need allies. We need the human alliance." Felt the mood in the room shift. They did not respect humans. They thought of them as useful but weak. The idea of asking them for help was shameful. But her father was wiser than his advisors. "The humans have something we do not," Emperor said. "They have numbers and they have something else, a certain determination. I have seen the reports from Velar 7. He looked at. One human soldier killed over 40 raiders by himself. Perhaps we have underestimated them." A request went out to the Human Alliance. They responded quickly. They would send soldiers, ships, weapons. The humans were eager to prove themselves. The first human fleets arrived a month later, stood on the observation deck and watched them come out of faster-than-light travel. Hundreds of ships, smaller than vessels but numerous. They filled the space like a swarm of insects. Stood beside her. His face showed an emotion she had not seen before, pride. "My people," he said quietly, "they have waited a long time for a chance like this." "A chance to die?" asked. She did not mean it cruelly. She was genuinely confused. Shook his head. "A chance to show the galaxy what we are. For 50 years everyone has called us weak, young, inexperienced. Now we will show them the truth." "And what is the truth?" He turned to look at her. His dark eyes were serious. "That we may be young, we may die easily, but we are not weak. We have fought each other for our entire history. War is in our blood. We know how to suffer. We know how to keep fighting when everything tells us to stop." He paused. "They think they are warriors. They do not know what war really is." The first battles came quickly. They attacked the outer colonies, testing the defense lines. The commanders sent their best soldiers to fight back. They lost. They were too fast, too brutal. Soldiers were strong and well-trained, but they had been at peace for centuries. They had forgotten what real war felt like. More attacks came, more losses. The people began to panic. In the royal palace, advisors screamed at each other, looking for someone to blame. Then asked to speak. The War Council fell silent when this human stepped forward. Many of them looked at him with confusion or contempt. What could a human tell them about war? "You are fighting the wrong way," said. His voice was calm, but it carried across the room. "You are trying to match the strength against strength. You will always lose that fight. They are bigger, faster, more experienced, but they have a weakness." "What weakness?" Emperor asked. "They expect their enemies to fight like them, stand in lines, exchange fire, retreat when wounded. They do not know how to fight someone who does not follow those rules." "And what do you suggest?" Smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "Let me show you." He asked for volunteers, humans only, a small force, 200 soldiers who were willing to do something nobody else would try. Watched him prepare his team. They trained for 2 weeks, sleeping only a few hours each night. They practiced movements she had never seen before. Silent attacks, ambush tactics, ways to kill that seemed almost unfair. Then they left for the front lines. Did not see for 3 months, but she heard stories. The stories started small: a supply ship destroyed, a communication station sabotaged, enemy patrols disappearing without a trace. At first the thought it was bad luck, equipment failure, accidents. Then the stories got bigger. An entire battalion wiped out in a single night. No survivors, no warnings. They simply died in their sleep, throats cut by shadows. A general found dead in his own command ship. His guards were alive but unconscious. They never saw what hit them. 3 enemy ships crashed into each other after their navigation systems were secretly. They began to whisper about ghosts, demons, something in the darkness that hunted them without mercy. Received recordings from the battlefield. She sat alone in her room and watched them. She saw leading his team through enemy territory like they were invisible. She saw them strike with perfect coordination, hitting the enemy where they least expected and disappearing before anyone could respond. She saw himself, always at the front, always taking the greatest risks. He was wounded again and again. She saw medics patching him up between missions. She saw him refuse to rest, refuse to stop, refuse to quit. In one recording, he spoke to his soldiers before a particularly dangerous mission. Listen to his words. "They believe they know war," said. "They believe they are the greatest warriors in the galaxy, but they have only fought enemies who follow rules. We do not follow rules. We do what is necessary. We fight dirty. We fight mean. We fight until we win or until we are dead." He paused. "Tonight, we remind them why humans survived on a dangerous planet for 200,000 years. We are the most stubborn species in the universe. We do not know how to give up." His soldiers cheered, felt tears in her eyes, though she did not fully understand why. The months passed, the war continued, but the tide was slowly turning. Human tactics spread through the Allied forces. Commanders swallowed their pride and learned from human soldiers. Ambushes, sabotage, psychological warfare. These were not honorable tactics, but they worked. And always, at the center of the most dangerous missions, was. He became more than a soldier. He became a symbol. When morale was low, commanders would say his name to inspire the troops. When missions seemed impossible, they would point to what his team had achieved. The humans called him many things: the shadow captain, the ghost, the one who returns. They had their own name for him, heard it from a captured enemy soldier during an interrogation. "The Undying," the prisoner said. His voice was filled with fear. "We kill him and he comes back. We wound him and he keeps fighting. He is not human, he cannot be, he is something else, something that refuses to die." Thought about the man she had married, the quiet man who read poetry and ate simple meals, the man who had asked only for a chance. She realized something then, something that had been growing in her heart for months. She missed him, she worried about him, she wanted him to come home. She was falling in love with him. The thought terrified her. Lived for thousands of years. Humans lived for less than a century. Loving him meant losing him. It meant watching him grow old and die while she stayed young. But she could not stop the feeling. Every night she watched the recordings from the front lines. Every night she prayed to gods she barely believed in that he would survive. And every night she waited for the day he would come home. The war reached its darkest hour in the 3rd year. The frustrated by their losses launched their largest attack yet. A fleet of 5,000 ships carrying millions of soldiers pushed toward the heart of space. Their target was simple: the capital world, the home of Emperor, the end of the empire. Stood on the palace balcony and watched the sky. Somewhere out there, beyond the clouds and stars, the fleet was coming. Nothing could stop them now. The defenses were broken. The human forces were scattered. In a few days, perhaps less, enemy ships would fill this sky. Her father had ordered evacuation for the royal family. Ships waited to take them to safety, but refused to leave. "I will stay," she told her father. "If our people must face this end, their princess should stand with them." Emperor looked at his daughter with old, tired eyes. The war had aged him terribly. He nodded once. "You have become strong, stronger than I ever expected." She did not feel strong. She felt afraid, and she missed so badly it hurt. There had been no word from him in 2 weeks. His last mission had taken him deep into enemy territory, the most dangerous mission of the entire war. A suicide mission, some had called it. Even the humans who him had not expected him to return. But they did not know him like did. They did not know that he always came back, always. The fleet arrived faster than expected. They dropped out of faster-than-light travel like a storm of metal and fire, filling the sky with their terrible shapes. Alarms screamed across the planet. People ran through the streets, looking for shelter that would not save them. Watched the enemy ships take position above the capital. She counted hundreds of them, thousands, more ships than she had ever seen. They were not here to win a battle, they were here to destroy everything. The commander sent a message to the entire planet. His ugly face appeared on every screen. "People of the Empire," he said, his voice was like grinding rocks. "Your time is over. Surrender now and some of you may live as slaves. Fight and you will all die. You have 1 hour to decide." The hour passed in silence. No one surrendered. They would die on their feet, not their knees. Then, just as they prepared to attack, something appeared on the long-range sensors. Ships, hundreds of ships, coming fast from every direction. Watched the tactical display with confusion. These were not ships. They were not standard human military vessels either. They were different, smaller, faster. Ships from 100 different designs gathered together like a swarm of angry insects. A communication signal broke through all channels. A familiar voice filled the air. "This is Captain of the Human Alliance Special Forces. To all allied ships and soldiers, this is our moment. For 3 years we have bled and died fighting this enemy. For 3 years we have shown them what humans can do. Today we show them what happens when they push us too far." Felt her heart stop. It was him. He was alive. He was here. The tactical display updated as more and more ships arrived. Not just human ships, vessels that had been thought lost. Ships from a dozen other species who had been conquered by the ships that had been gathering in secret, waiting for this moment. "They call us weak," continued. "They call us young and foolish. They say we do not understand war. Today we teach them the truth. Today we show them why humanity survived ice ages and plagues and wars against ourselves. We survived because we never give up. We never stop fighting. We take everything the universe throws at us and we keep going." The gathering fleet was massive now, not as large as the Force but large enough. And they were not just defending, they were attacking. All ships commanded, "Begin attack." The battle that followed would be remembered for 1,000 years. The fleet, caught between the planet's defenses and the attacking fleet, fell into chaos. They had expected an easy victory. They had expected broken enemies waiting to die. Instead, they found warriors who had nothing left to lose. Watched the battle from the command center, her eyes fixed on one signal. The ship leading the attack. Ship. He flew like a madman. His small vessel danced through enemy fire, always moving, never stopping. He destroyed ships with impossible accuracy. When his weapons ran out, he rammed enemy vessels with his own ship, somehow surviving each impact. The other human pilots followed his example. They fought with the same desperate courage, the same refusal to accept defeat. One by one, they destroyed enemy ships. One by one, they died. But for every human ship that fell, 2 vessels burned. The enemy commander screamed orders at his fleet. "Regroup. Focus fire on the lead ship. Kill the human causing all this trouble." 100 ships turned their weapons on. Watched his ship take hit after hit. Pieces broke off. Fire erupted from its engines. Any sane person would retreat. Any normal soldier would try to escape. Flew straight at the enemy command ship. The commander's face appeared on the communication screen. For the first time, saw fear in an alien's eyes. "What are you?" the commander demanded. "What kind of creature are you?" His voice came through the speakers. He was calm, almost peaceful. "I am human," he said, "and you made a terrible mistake. You gave us something to fight for." His ship, broken and burning, crashed through the command ship's shields. The explosion lit up the sky like a new sun. For a long moment, everything was silent. Then the fleet began to break apart. Without their commander, without coordination, they fell into panic. Some tried to retreat. Others turned their weapons on each other. The Allied forces pushed forward, destroying everything in their path. The battle was won, but did not feel victory. She felt only cold emptiness. She stared at the tactical display at the place where signal had been. There was nothing there now, just empty space and burning debris. He was gone. She fell to her knees. Around her, people were cheering. The war was over, they had won. But she felt nothing. The man she loved was dead. He had saved everyone, and it had cost him everything. Hours passed. Rescue ships searched the debris field for survivors, waited in the command center, unable to move, unable to hope. Then a communication signal came through. "This is Rescue Team 7. We have found a survivor in the debris field, badly injured but alive. Identity confirmed. Captain, repeat, Captain is alive." Ran. She did not remember how she got to the medical ship. She did not remember pushing past doctors and guards. She only remembered reaching the room where he lay, broken and bandaged, more machine than man at that moment. His eyes opened when she entered, damaged and unfocused, but still his eyes, still alive. He whispered, "You are safe." She fell beside his bed and took his hand. Tears streamed down her face. She did not care who saw. She did not care about dignity or duty or anything else. "You came back," she said. "You always come back." He managed a small smile. "I promised," he said. "I promised to be a good husband. A good husband does not leave his wife alone." She laughed through her tears. "You foolish, impossible man. You crashed your ship into the enemy command vessel. It seemed like a good idea at the time. The doctors said he would need months to recover. His body was shattered, bones broken, organs damaged, burns covering half his skin. Any other species would have died instantly. Humans, it seemed, did not die so easily." News of the battle spread across the galaxy. The story of the human captain who destroyed the command ship grew with each telling. Some said he had killed the commander with his bare hands. Some said he had walked through fire to escape his crashing ship. Some said he could not be killed at all. They had called him the Undying. Now everyone else did too. Enemy forces fled at the sound of his name. Planets that had been under control rose up against their occupiers, inspired by stories of human courage. The great empire, which had seemed so powerful, began to crumble. And sat beside her husband's bed, holding his hand, watching him heal slowly day by day. She did not care about the war anymore. She did not care about politics or empires or legacies. She only cared about him. One night, while the nurses were away, she leaned close to him. "I was wrong about you," she said quietly. "I was wrong about everything. You are not weak. You never were. You are the strongest person I have ever known." He looked at her with those dark, steady eyes. "I am just a man," he said. "A man who found something worth fighting for." "And what is that?" He reached up with a bandaged hand and touched her face gently. "You," he said, "I fought to come back to you." Closed her eyes. For the first time in her life, she understood what love really meant. It was not about species or duty. It was about finding someone worth fighting for and never letting go. She leaned down and kissed him softly, their first real kiss, the beginning of something new. Outside, the war was ending. A new era was beginning for the galaxy. And in a quiet hospital room, a princess and a human soldier held each other, finally understanding what they had found. Something worth living for. 5 years had passed since the fall of the Empire. The galaxy was different now. The species that had once looked down on humanity had changed their minds. Humans were everywhere. Human diplomats negotiated treaties. Human soldiers trained armies. Human ideas spread across 100 worlds. and at the center of it all stood, watched her husband from across the great hall of the Galactic Council. He wore a new uniform now, black with gold decorations, marking him as Supreme Commander of the United Forces. The title had been given to him by representatives of 30 different species. Even with all their ancient pride, had voted in his favor. The man who had once been dismissed as a lesser human now held more military power than any emperor or king in the galaxy. He still looked the same too, the same dark eyes, the same quiet strength, the same slight smile he gave her when their eyes met across a crowded room. To the galaxy he was a legend. To her he was simply the man she loved. The ceremony today was special. The council was gathering to officially declare the end of the war and the beginning of a new era of peace. Representatives from every major species filled the great hall. Even some were present, the survivors of their shattered empire now seeking peace instead of conquest. Stood with the delegation, wearing the formal dress of a princess, but her status had changed too. She was no longer just a royal daughter given away in a political marriage. She was the wife of the Supreme Commander. Her voice carried weight in council meetings. Her opinions shaped policy. She had found a purpose she never expected. Emperor, her father, sat on his throne at the front of the hall. He was older now, but his eyes were proud when he looked at his daughter, proud of what she had become, proud of the choice he had made, even though he had not understood it at the time. The ceremony began with speeches, long, formal words about sacrifice and victory and the future. Listened politely, but her mind was elsewhere. She was thinking about the journey that had brought them here, the pain, the fear, the moments when everything seemed lost, and the man who had refused to give up, no matter how impossible the odds. When it was turn to speak, the entire hall fell silent. Everyone wanted to hear from the legend, the undying, the man who had killed the commander and broken the enemy's spirit. Walked to the center podium. He moved with a slight limp now, a reminder of the injuries he had suffered. The doctors said he would carry that limp for the rest of his life. He did not seem to mind. He looked out at the gathered representatives and began to speak. 5 years ago I was a soldier, a captain in the human military, nobody special, nobody important. I was married to a princess who did not want me, sent to represent a species that everyone considered weak. A few nervous laughs echoed through the hall, felt her cheeks warm slightly. I did not ask for this war. None of us did. They chose it for us. They looked at the galaxy and saw only victims, only species to conquer and enslave. They thought they knew what strength meant. His voice hardened. They were wrong. Strength is not about size or speed or years of experience. Strength is about what you are willing to sacrifice for others. Strength is about standing up when everyone else has fallen. Strength is about fighting for something bigger than yourself. He paused, looking across the hall. I have led human soldiers into impossible battles. I have watched them die with courage that humbled me. They were farmers and teachers and shopkeepers before the war. They had never held weapons. They had never seen death. But when their homes were threatened, when their families were in danger, they became something more. They became warriors. Humans do not fight because we are strong. We fight because we are stubborn. We fight because we love. We fight because we refuse to accept that we cannot make a difference. They called me the Undying. They thought I was special. They thought I was different from other humans. He shook his head. I am not special. Every human has this fire inside them. Every human has this refusal to quit. I simply had more opportunities to show it. He raised his hand, and the hall fell completely silent. Today we declare peace, but peace is not the end of our work. It is the beginning. We must build a galaxy where no species is considered weak or lesser, where every voice matters, where the strong protect the vulnerable instead of preying on them. This is what humanity fought for, not for power, not for glory, for a better future. And we will keep fighting for that future with words instead of weapons for as long as it takes." He finished speaking and stepped back. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the applause began. It started with the human delegation, but it spread quickly. Former subjects, species that had once dismissed humanity as primitive newcomers, they all rose to their feet, clapping and cheering for the man who had saved them. Felt tears running down her face. She did not try to hide them. After the ceremony, there was a reception. Dignitaries and politicians crowded around, everyone wanting a moment with the famous Supreme Commander, watched from a distance, giving him space to work. But eventually, he broke away from the crowd and walked to her. He took her hand and led her out to a quiet balcony overlooking the city. The lights of 1,000 buildings sparkled below them like earthbound stars. "Finally," he said with a tired smile, "I thought they would never let me go." "You are a hero," said. "Everyone wants to be near a hero." He shook his head. "I am just a soldier who got lucky. The real heroes are the ones who did not come back." They stood in silence for a moment, thinking about all the friends and comrades they had lost. The war had cost so much. Victory did not erase that pain. "I have been thinking," said finally, "about us." Felt a small flutter of worry. "What about us?" "You will live for thousands of years. I have perhaps 40 or 50 left if I am lucky." He turned to look at her. "Every day I think about how unfair that is to you, to love someone you know you will lose." Took his hands in hers. "I used to think about that too. When I first realized I loved you, it terrified me. The thought of watching you grow old, the thought of losing you. And now," she smiled, "now I understand. A single lifetime with you is worth more than 10,000 years alone. I would choose you over immortality. I would choose you over everything." He pulled her close and held her tightly. She could feel his heart beating, strong and steady, the heart of a warrior, the heart of the man she loved. "I do not know what I did to deserve you," he said quietly. "You saved my cousin. You saved my people. You saved the entire galaxy." She pulled back slightly to look at his face. "But more than that, you treated me with kindness when I gave you none. You asked only for a chance. That is what you did to deserve me." He laughed softly. "When you put it that way, it does seem like a lot." They stayed on the balcony for a long time, watching the city below. Somewhere out there, celebrations were happening. Fireworks exploded in the sky. Music drifted up from the streets. A galaxy was celebrating peace. But for Anne, this moment was private. This moment was theirs. Years later, historians would write about the war against the. They would call it the greatest conflict in galactic history. They would analyze battles and tactics and political decisions. And they would always come back to one name: the Undying, the God of War. They would tell stories about his impossible victories, his refusal to accept defeat, his ability to inspire soldiers to fight beyond their limits. They would paint him as something more than human, a legend walking among ordinary people. But knew the truth. He was not a god. He was a man. A stubborn, courageous, loving man who had done extraordinary things simply because someone needed to do them. She had married him out of duty. She had expected nothing from him except disappointment. Instead, she had watched him rise from a dismissed human soldier to the most respected warrior in the galaxy. She had seen him bleed and break and rebuild himself. She had fallen in love with him, slowly and then all at once. And she had discovered something about herself in the process. She was not just a princess. She was not just a political tool. She was a partner, a confidant, a wife. She was his and he was hers, for whatever time they had together. That night, after the celebrations ended and the dignitaries went home and returned to their quarters, it was a simple apartment, nothing like the grand palace she had grown up in, had refused anything fancy. He said he did not need luxury to be happy. He only needed her. She watched him remove his medals and decorations, setting them aside like they were nothing special. She watched him wash his face and change into simple clothes. She watched the legend become a man again. And she loved him. Gods, how she loved him. She said. He turned to look at her. Yes. Thank you. For what? For everything. She walked to him and wrapped her arms around him. For being patient when I was cruel, for saving my family, for giving me something I never knew I needed. And what is that? She looked up at his face, at the man who had become her entire world. Purpose, she said, hope, love, everything that makes life worth living. He kissed her forehead gently. I should thank you too. Before I met you, I was just a soldier, fighting because I did not know what else to do. You gave me something worth fighting for. They held each other in the quiet room, two people from different worlds who had found each other against all odds. Outside, the galaxy was changing. Old empires were falling. New alliances were forming. The future was uncertain and frightening and full of possibility. But in that moment, none of that mattered. Had married the human out of duty, she had expected nothing. And she had found everything.